Starting January 1st, immigrants looking to settle in Quebec will have to pass a values test. To answer our questions about this, we're being joined by immigration lawyer Chantal Deluce. Chantal, thank you so much for being here. All right, so the Quebec Immigration Minister, Simon Jolin Barrette, gave two examples of what could be on this test that new immigrants are going to have to take. The first was circle the pictogram on who can marry legally in Quebec, and the other, it's so ironic, it's delicious, identify discriminatory hiring practices. What other types of questions are we expecting to see on this test?
Well, I think the questions will center around common human rights issues and equality issues. So things like gender equality, equality for sexual minorities. And I also think that there will be questions centered around Bill 21, so this bar against wearing religious symbols in a public job in Quebec.
Yeah, and we are looking at this through the lens of Bill 21. If Bill 21 didn't exist and this Quebec government proposed this values test, what do you think the conversation would be? How would we be looking at it? Because we are looking at it as almost an extension of Bill 21.
Yes, and I think that's what it's about, because if you look at the language around the press release, it said it's going to be a test about democratic values and Quebec values, as if there's some kind of difference between those two things. And the only difference that I can think of is Bill 21. Sure. And in fact, I think that's the message that they're trying to get across. Okay,
who's going to have to take this test? Because it's not every type of everyone who's moving to the province of Quebec.
Right, and that's interesting because it's only going to be economic immigrants destined to Quebec. So those are people who, by very definition, are young, usually under the age of 35, educated, usually at a university or post-university level, and they have skilled work experience. So it strikes me as odd that this is the demographic that we're going to administer this test to, because those are the very people who likely know what the values in Canada, what the values in Quebec are.
So everybody can have an off day. What happens if you fail this test?
If you fail the test, they do give you an option to rewrite it.
Okay.
But I think virtually nobody is going to fail this test. It's 20 questions. You have to pass with only 75%. And everybody knows the answer to these questions. I mean, if the objective is to try to make sure that people share our values, it doesn't accomplish that. All they have to do is pass the test that they know the answer.
Yeah, so long as you know the answer, you don't have to believe in the answer.
Right.
You can be a misogynist who doesn't want women to have equal rights to men, but so long as you say that's what the answer is, you can move on.
Correct. So
yeah.
What are we trying to accomplish?
What exactly? So what are they trying to accomplish, do you think?
I think they are sending a message not to immigrants, but to their own voter base.
Okay.
Because immigrants are going to pass the test. They know the answers. Everybody knows if they're coming to Canada, they have to have certain values, etc. But what they're doing is I think they're pandering to a xenophobic element in their own voter base that seems to think that if you're an immigrant, then you won't share these values.
So fundamentally, though, you're saying the bar is pretty low to pass this test. It's not necessarily going to make it that much harder.
It's not going to make it
to move to Quebec.
Correct. It's not going to make it harder at all. This is about optics, pure and simple.
And to give a little bit of international context, there are democratic nations in the world that do have a test component for citizenship, don't they?
Yes, I mean, most nations have a citizenship test, but most nations don't have around values. It's about laws and rights and history, etc.
Okay, but I think in my research said that Germany has some sort of values test, France as well. So it's not unprecedented to have something like this. I think, personally for me, I'm looking at it as kind of it's a test that doesn't really test your values. It tests your knowledge of values, and those are two different things.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, do we want to set the bar lower or do we want to set it higher? I think that's the question.
All right, well, we're going to kick all eyes on Quebec. Chantal Deluce, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching. If you like this, be sure to subscribe here.
And you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.